And I invite Collette Stevenson to open the debate. Around 7 minutes. Ms Stevenson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm grateful to members for supporting my motion. The catalyst for this debate was a recent stakeholder roundtable we had in Parliament, led by Dr Stephen Maxwell from the University of Glasgow, on domestic abuse in the LGBTQ+ community. Bringing together MSPs, Dr Maxwell and representatives from councils, police and third sector, this event allowed us to have an open conversation about the many challenges LGBTQ+ people experience, not only the harm of domestic abuse, but the barriers in accessing support. This was followed with a report which has 14 recommendations, and I will try to cover as much of these as I can in the time that I have. Domestic abuse is an abhorrent crime, and we all recognise the harm it causes to individuals and to our society. There have been some big developments in recent years in terms of tackling the damage of domestic abuse, including the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act 2018, which brought together within one offence the modern understanding of what domestic abuse looks like, including psychological domestic abuse, such as coercive and controlling behaviour. The Scottish Government also developed the Equally Safe strategy to prevent and eradicate violence against women and girls. This sets out a vision of prevention, improving support services and strengthening the justice response for victims and perpetrators. These developments are very welcome. However, at the round table, we heard about the issues when it comes to gender framing of policies, and many people in the community don't fit into societal assumptions on masculinity or femininity, or into traditional binary gender norms. So there is a need to ensure that policy and practice works to ensure anyone experiencing domestic abuse can get the support that they need. The roundtable participants agreed that there needs to be a national LGBTQ+ domestic abuse action plan, and perhaps based on or aligned with Equally Safe, and I hope the Government will consider this. Presiding Officer, underpinning the issues and the invisibility of domestic abuse faced by the community is data collection. There are challenges in understanding the extent of such crimes, and for example, the Crown Office publishes a breakdown of the sex of the accused in domestic abuse charges, but not the sex of the victim. And Police Scotland sometimes includes the sex of both the suspect and the victim in its statistics. We know that most cases of domestic abuse don't get reported, and I would encourage any victim to seek support from organisations who can help them. And there are many great services out there. Looking at Police Scotland data from 2022 to 23, where gender was recorded, around 3% of recorded domestic abuse incidents involved same-sex victims and suspects. This equates to around 1,500 incidents. There is no breakdown of these figures for transgender people. However, research suggests that between 30 to 45% of LGBTQ+ people will experience intimate partner violence, and this is in line with levels experienced by women in heterosexual relationships. I hope the Government can work alongside its partners in the justice sector to consider what approaches can be taken to better understand the scale of LGBTQ+ domestic abuse, and perhaps initially to get official estimates of the prevalence of this. One of the challenges for LGBTQ+ people who are experiencing domestic abuse is a nervousness about engaging with statutory services. And it was interesting to hear police officers at the round table acknowledging the concerns that many LGBTQ+ people have, while being clear on a commitment to ensuring Scotland's police force resembles and acts for the diverse communities that make up modern Scotland. However, the changes that have to be made go well beyond the police. And a key part of policies like Equally Safe is to prevent domestic abuse from occurring in the first place. So there is a need to ensure that public sector bodies and indeed wider society is ready and able to prevent domestic abuse within the community. This could include developing an LGBTQ+ curriculum within existing sexual violence and domestic abuse courses, including those provided by statutory services. There is also a specific need for risk assessments to be more inclusive of LGBTQ+ experiences. For example, multi-agency risk assessment conferences, or MARACs, are used across Scotland to help identify high-risk cases. But concerns were raised at the round table that processes like this are structured around heterosexual norms. In fact, stakeholders mentioned that the prevalence of LGBTQ+ people being referred to support agencies through a MARAC was well below the expected number, which likely indicates an issue with the current safeguarding policies. So overall, there appears to be a significant underestimate of the prevalence of domestic abuse within the community. And in turn, this has perhaps meant that local services can't recognise and address the issue. This is not a criticism of services, but an example of why there has to be a shift in the approach to tackling domestic abuse. There is a lot to say on this topic, Presiding Officer, but I want to conclude by thanking Dr Maxwell and his colleagues for their work to highlight this issue, as well as to the people who have taken part in research studies on LGBTQ+ domestic abuse. And I also want to thank everyone who took part in the round table earlier this year. I hope today's debate will shine a light on domestic abuse, encourage people to seek the support they deserve, and help begin the change we need to see for people in the community who experience domestic abuse, something which has for too long been hidden. I hope to meet with ministers soon to discuss the recommendations, and that the Scottish Government can help advance these, particularly around identifying gaps in service provision, ensuring agencies are equipped to deal with the specific challenges for the community, and helping ensure there is adequate data collection. We are all agreed in here that domestic abuse has no place in modern Scotland, and we must do everything we can to support anyone who experiences it.